Hello everybody. Have you ever got to a scene in a game, show, movie, etc. that just gets everything right about the characters in a quagmire? Where the stakes are high, and the characters are being pushed to their limits, and yet stay so in character, or showing off new parts of their character that are natural extensions of their pre-existing traits. A scene where arcs are completed, and dynamics shown flawlessly. One scene that comes to mind is the fake emerald scene in Sonic Adventure 2. This scene shows so much Sonic and Eggman's dynamic, showing off Sonic and Tails being able to have a conversation with only a simple nod, while Eggman shows off his cunning nature, single-handedly catching Sonic in a trap, and shipping him off to burn in the Earth's atmosphere, with Sonic's assumed death, pumping Tails up, to not give up, and take Sonic's place. It's great. As for murder drones, there is one scene that comes to mind, that perfectly fits the bill. There are contenders for this title, as there is a lot of standout moments in the show. Lots of moments that are endlessly requitable, and tense. Some standouts for me would be N standing up to V, in a cathartic moment, where he finally gets a backbone. He, after so long of being pushed around, stands up to the one who he was once in love with, for longer than even he knew. Instead of submitting to V, and just letting her kill Uzi. I still don't understand the hate this scene can get. One of my favorites, when N decapitates quote-unquote Tessa, after she showed herself to be manipulating N. It showed N wasn't being a pushover anymore, and could actually stand up for those he cares for. Heck, even throw in intermission, with so many standout scenes. Like that one scene where V went to kill Uzi, only to see herself in Uzi. It's great. But, even with intermission included, there's only one scene that is my absolute favorite. There, if you will, fake emerald scene of murder drones. The episode 8 hallway scene. This scene nails everything I wanted to see in the show at this point. My overall opinion on the finale, from a critical perspective, is that it was okay. I'm not gonna lie, kinda sucked at capping off the series other than providing cool endings for Uzi, V, Sin and kinda N, with all the other things going on just left as unexplored. But as a piece of entertainment, made to, well, entertain, the episode passes with flying colors, and is one of my favorites. This scene is just absolutely perfect in every way. If you haven't seen it in a while, go do yourself a favor and re-watch it. So, enough preamble, let's dive right in. So, I'll run down the lead up to the scene itself, cover the scene, then break down the characters in the scene. First off, it showed how outmatched Uzi and N were against Sin. The whole show built Uzi up as this ultimate Mary Sue. This gets to the point where she can just shrug off possession as if it was nothing. So Sin bodying the two really puts things back into perspective. They went from being super confident, with Uzi learning things like null, and like I said shrug off possession. As for N, he fought off Solver possessed Uzi. So, at this point, the duo were ready to confront Sin, or in N's case, as ready as he could be. They were also riding off the high of confessing their feelings to one another, and finally, officially, dating. Even as the duo two hurtled to the surface of Copper 9, Uzi's being way overconfident, but then Sin basically comes and says you ain't seen nothing yet kid, and just crushes Uzi's null code that she caught, which is a black hole mind you, like if it was sugar glass. She then just taunts them, and reveals N's insecurity, with Uzi noticing it. Then, Uzi, reassuring N, that everything will be okay, with just a simple look. They even set up a brief false sense of hope, as Uzi drives off possession, without an explanation. Thanks Liam. But then Sin shows how out of league the two are, ripping Uzi's core out as if it was nothing. She would have fully ripped it out too, if it wasn't for N going berserk on Sin, making her target him and nearly kill him. One thing I absolutely love about Sin in this episode is how you can tell none of this is challenging her. Like, you can tell, for the most part, that N, Uzi, and later V have to put their all to take on Sin, while Sin is not taking anything seriously. And why should she? She was so high up on the food chain, she got comfortable, thus leading her to underestimate the trio, and paid for it. They did the best way for Sin's downfall. Anyway, Sin effortlessly decimates N and Uzi, nearly killing both, with every narrow escape, not hindering Sin, but exciting her. You can see her sadistic glee just radiate from her. This to her is almost like a game of cat and mouse. Uzi, who is still recovering from getting her chest ripped open, uses her solver to make a desperate escape, with Sin enjoying every little twist and turn. Uzi makes to escape. Then we briefly cut back to V and J's fight, with J getting the upper hand on V. On a side note, it's nice to see J finally prove her worth, with her fighting V. Or at least until she gets booted out of the story. Anyway, we cut back to Uzi, dragging N's body as his head grows back, running for dear life. This is the scene's start in my eyes. Uzi then off-screen takes N behind some pipes, and hides, just as he comes back online. Sin, hot on their tails, loses sight of N and Uzi. She then scans the area, and does her now iconic. This part is just great, leaving me at the edge of my seat. When I first viewed this, I had a feeling that N was going to die, but I wasn't sure if this was the scene that they would have killed him in. Anyway, Sin's callback pings would start to give N Vietnam flashbacks, of himself and V being torn apart. Also, an added layer of cruelty, as N still thinks V is dead at this point. And for Uzi, Sin's callback pings put stress on her core, making it try to bust out of her chest. Uzi grabs N's hand, and holds it tight, to keep from making a peep, that also seems to snap N out of his flashbacks. Then, V comes after J punted her into the hall. Sin, still not knowing where N or Uzi were, makes a very quick plan on the spot, showing off her ruthless cunning nature, and how clever she can really be. She shapeshifts into N, with V relieved that he's okay. Now let's slow things down, and tell where V is in the story. From her perspective, she, somehow, survived the Sentinel's attack on her, and tames one. She left herself behind to be able to plot against Sin behind her back, I assume. I think the more mundane, but real reason for her fake-out death was that she couldn't fit inside the 7th episode, and to give a more climatic end, they quote-unquote kill her. Now that Copper 9's gone down the gutter, and she finds quote-unquote N, safe and sound, she finally decides to revel that she knew Tessa, and the company by extension, were gone. Further telling that Tessa was Sin, things that were the big secrets she held in the whole show. But this was all a plan by Sin to get N to reveal his location. How? Well, knowing N's impulsiveness, especially when it comes to those he cares for, N would know that if this was the real V, she's walking straight into a trap. Uzi reminds him it could be in a trap himself. But Sin, being able to read her drones like a book, knew that N's impulsive and protective nature would prevail, and she guessed right. N shouts to V, warning that she's talking to a fake N. But, then he falls right into Sin's trap. Sin then rips N's core out and taunts V. This making V stutter and stammer as her worst nightmare has come to be. N being killed by Sin, after letting go info she kept secret just so this scenario wouldn't play out. Info, mind you, she kept secret despite her want to be with N. From what I've got, she's never let her feeling from the manor go, and put on a mask of being sadistic, to do her job to please Sin, but more on it later. Anyway, Sin taunts her, and then makes V run for her life, thus ending the scene. Now, starting with Uzi, she's kinda the weakest in the scene, but only by comparison. I'm not going to hold this against the episode however, as it's really good at showing Uzi's character on its own, and Uzi's at her best in the entire series within the episode. This scene is just here to show a different part of her character. really good, but overshadowed by the two heavyweights in the scene. The whole finale seems to show Uzi's best. It's all there, her mix between being self-aware and embracing her cringe is all there, and yet can also show her sweet and caring side. This scene shows the culmination of her and N's relationship, and her relationship with others. Going from not caring about anyone, as she had no one, to being supportive, being able to pay back N for all the support he gave her throughout the show's run. Despite her own heart trying to break out of her chest, she comforts N, and it makes him snap out of his PTSD attack. This shows how well they work together, feeling so much like they complete one another. I love to see it. I'm not a huge shipper, or as big as a shipper as I once was, but I'm not going to get into the whole philosophical debate of shipping now. N has slightly more going on. This scene shows N's impulsive and protective nature feeding into a downward spiral that nearly led to his death. N's main want from the jump was to have people who care about him. That's all he ever wanted. He found that in V, Sin and Tessa in the manor, and on Copper 9. He found that with Uzi and V at the end of the show, after being so desperate for any good interactions. However, N can be impulsive, like him throwing himself in harm's way, like he did for Sin, V or Uzi, or in his coldest scene, where he decapitates Tessa. He acted on impulse, and probably due to his high stress with everything going on, with V's presumed death, and Tessa lying and trying to kill his last friend, and love interest, Uzi. He acted on impulse. He tends to act on impulse when he's in a split life or death situation, but also his care for others can blend with his spontaneous actions during stressful events, and result in him putting himself or others in harm's way, or doing some morally questionable things. I don't think overprotective, like some claim, but he can still be protective, especially under stress. And both the factors made him act on whim in this scene, with him warning V, even though he knows V could be a Solver hologram, and just a trap to lure him out. He just knew if it was V, she'd be in grave danger, so he warns her, even though Uzi advises not to, and yells at V to stop, as it's a trap. And it was, as Sin knew full well that N's impulsiveness under stress would get the better of him, to the point where even the slightest hint that his friend was in grave danger, he'd jump in to help, even to his own deterrent. And on that note, Sin. I've already gone in depth on Sin before, so I'm not going to rant on Sin as much as V, but Sin is one of the absolute highlights of the episode. And this scene is no different. She was just on another level when it came to her manipulation, specifically in this scene, when she lost N and Uzi. By chance, V comes. She then immediately gets to work, shape-shifting into N. Her plan was to lure N out by posing as him, getting V to get all emotional, making N feel worried knowing that V could be in lethal danger, making him warn her, exposing his location, and it worked. V admits everything she did to N, even crying as she does so, and it works. N reveals himself, and, giving Sin an ample chance to kill him, and she just about succeeds. She rips out N's core, then taunts V about her deal with Sin. More on that later. This showed Sin's not only torturous and sick nature, but manipulative, and very cunning. She was playing 4D chess, playing off everyone's weaknesses, just to get N to reveal his location, so she could kill him. I'm sure there were less convoluted ways to get N, but this is Sin we're talking. She is extremely sadistic, and would rather go to large length, just for fun. And what I mean by fun is torturing her enemies until they submit or die. It works so well. Like I said in my previous video, this scene shows off everything about Sin, and what makes her work so well. Now last but not least is V. V's my favorite character in the show. I'm a bit of a sucker for characters that have deep motives, and can show compassion, just having a hard time showing it. Or characters that can be jerks sometimes, or are unapologetic jerks. V can be a bit of a sarcastic jerk, but falls more into the former category. as she does show compassion to those who she's close to, like Hen, Lizzie and maybe Uzi. But, I'll admit, there were some things previously that didn't really make sense without the context that this scene gave. Starting off, we never knew if V lost all her memories like Hen, or not. There also seemed to be some contradictions, like V talking about some obligation of doing some deal. She said in episode 4.
We do our jobs, and that thing leaves us alone.
The time I thought that V was talking about Uzi, however that was in reference to Sin. Also, we never knew why V was holding secrets. She just seemed to hold them, for no reason. It didn't make sense how she seemingly went from holding secrets, and being antagonistic to Uzi, to sacrificing herself. She would seem to kill worker drones for no reason, even when she wasn't hungry or anything, and her sacrifice seemed like it was leaving some huge details out. But, in this scene it fills in the blanks left by her sacrifice. First, it confirms that yes, V knew they weren't sent by the company. She knew who Sin was. The reason she kept secrets from N was to keep him safe. V never let go of her feelings toward N from the manner, based off V's reaction at the end of 5, and her subtle protective nature to N.
There I am, Gary, there I am!
So, Sin and her made a deal. Sin said something along of the lines of if you do your job, you and N will be left alone, as she stated in the scene. This was motivation enough for V to go and do the stuff she did. The reason she had the psychotic killer mask, and killed random workers far after N stopped was because she was supposed to be hitting quotas to keep Sin happy, as Sin was watching. This also explains why she was so antagonistic to Uzi, was at first because she was a worker, something to be killed, not be befriended, and probably jealousy as N focused more on Uzi, but that's a story for another time. So, when Uzi's solver activated, V kept a weary eye on Uzi. They were sent specifically to root out any solver drones, as they could threaten Sin. So, she took any chance to kill Uzi. But once she realizes, Uzi's is N's new love interest, and that Sin came back, she acted a lot less antagonistic to Uzi, even helping her. I feel like she knew that now that Sin was here, it was either fight or flight. So, she probably start to think of a way to kill or escape Sin. And this scene shows that with some thought, her fake out death was just to get Sin off her back. To make Sin think V's dead, so V could work behind her back. It reveals V knew who Sin was, showing she never lost her memories. It showed her motivation to keep N safe. She said herself,
Jay too! And I'm so sorry. I should have been honest. I was just so scared for us. For you.
She kept her secrets because she was scared for them, then emphasizes, you, in reference to N. Also, one thing I love, is this scene shows off these imperfections, making her feel real. Sin said,
your job and I leave you and N alone. Right, V?
Taunting V with her deal, and this makes V fall back, wondering if there was a way to team up with Sin again. I love that. It makes her feel more real, that she would willingly go and reinstate a deal with the devil, to save one person. It feels so real. V isn't a goody two-shoes, and will do some ugly things to ensure a peaceful future. It feels so human, and real. I love that little interaction. Sin, only using that once again, just to taunt, showing how sadistic she is, as she drops all intentions of V teaming up with her. I love how Sin just prods V to get her to be vulnerable. It just really makes Sin feel like a true villain. This scene does what I wanted of the show after bringing V back. I don't mind when a character is brought back after a sacrifice, as long as it progresses their character to be better. Being a Sonic fan, a contested thing in the fandom is, if bringing back Shadow the Hedgehog from the dead was a good idea. I'm a part of the fandom that thinks bringing Shadow back allowed the writers to add more to his character, and I feel V falls into the same category, as she was brought back and finished her character, making everything make sense. The only real difference between V and Shadow is that Shadow was meant to stay dead, with the writers bringing him back due to his popularity, while the writers of Murder Drones, I think, fully intended for V to come back from the dead to finish her arc. This hallway scene just does so much right. Talking about smaller things, the animation and cinematography is top notch. Sin was just great, really selling her twisted glee in everything. I loved the music in this scene. I love when V was falling back on her deal with Sin, just to sell it that extra bit. Eternal Dream kicks in. It always gives me goosebumps. The voice acting was perfect as well. From Uzi's panicked panting, to N's scream for V to watch out. Special shout-outs got to Alana Fitzgerald as Sin, and Nola Klopp as V. I love how blank Sin sounds. No matter the cut cumatances, she's just being her creepy self, selling every scene. Also, Nola knocked it out of the park as V. I loved how sorry she sounded, as on screen V was letting this dam of emotions burst, as tears come down, apologizing to N for everything. I also love when Sin taunted V, it really sounded like she was desperate, and would reinstate basically her deal with the devil, in order to have a future with N. I love that. Well, I think I've talked for as long as I wanted to. The hallway scene of the final episode is just that one scene. That scene where the stakes are high, and the characters act so in character that it's just an absolute joy. Although, my critical stance is pretty mixed when it comes to the finale, this scene is enough to make me feel like every one of the main four, Uzi, N, V and Sin, were capped off nicely. This scene showed off what would happen if push come to shove for all four characters. It showed Uzi's caring side, N's caring, impulsive, and protective side to not only Uzi, but also anyone else he cares for deeply, like V. It shows V's regret for everything she did to N, and her extent she'd go to rectify her mistakes. And it shows Sin at her smartest, and most sadistic, with her making complex plans, understanding all the imperfections of the drones she tortured, like N's impulsive and protective nature, or V's affection to N. Or, maybe I'm wrong and spent 22 minutes of just yapping about a less than 2-minute scene. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you disagree with any of my points, or have anything else to add. As for now, sayonara.